This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And I'm slow. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of the special edition of Ask a Rabbi. And, I was trying to get that to post on Stuart's page, and thank you, Facebook. You're always so helpful. This is Rabbi.
A little sarcastic,
just
maybe?
A little bit, you think?
Yeah.
So again, this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chaim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. We are in a special memorial hour of Ask a Lawyer and Ask a Rabbi, and this edition is dedicated to the memory of Stuart M. Address, Esquire. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be a blessing. I know that it will. We'll be unpacking it for years to come. And so anyone is invited to give a call in, and that's to congregation, to 772-340-1590. And ask any question. It does not have to be about Stuart or about life. I was going to talk a little bit about you had talked during Ask a Lawyer a little bit about the process. And Jewish funerals are very earthy, as you said, very candid, very open about the reality of death and the need. One of the things that I say at a service is a thank you to those who come, because normally when we go through life, we expect that people will be able to do something back for us, right? We give a gift with the expectation. I give you a birthday gift, you're going to give me a birthday gift. I'm going to, give you a wedding gift, then whenever there's a big event in my life, a bar mitzvah celebration, a wedding, whatever, that there'll be something in return. And the reality is that Stuart can no longer return a gift. And so helping to see that somebody is in fact buried, and you're with me, so be aware. That they can't give back, right? Their initiating of new events is done. Right? Their life is complete. And as I pointed out again at Stuart's funeral, and I'll point out at future ones, and I point out at Yizkor, we have a tradition Jewishly to remember those we've lost 4 times a year. Once at Yom Kippur, once at Sukkot, again at Pesach, and then Shavuot. So 4 times a year we do special prayers for those that we've lost. And one of the interesting things, a sidebar, and we'll get back to it, was that Stuart never allowed Aaron to participate in those services, even for his grandfather, whom he's lost. He's lost both grandfathers, I should say. His mothers are still alive, but he's lost the grandfathers. And Stuart was adamant about that, and that we'll talk about that in a minute. But it doesn't mean that you won't continue to unpack the gifts that they've left and embedded in your life. I'm still unfolding the ones from my dad, whom, as I mentioned on Ask a Lawyer, I lost my dad at about the same age, same juncture as Aaron is now in his life. So, yeah, you will unpack those as long as you're breathing. You'll unpack gifts, but there can't be new ones.
What really, in a way, impressed me was the lack, if you want to call it pomp and circumstance, that other churches, like mine, would have with incense and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't miss that at all. And that's what really impressed me about it.
Well, we don't do flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
I
'cause-
noticed that too.
Yeah, a funeral is not to be beautified. I guess that's the bottom line. The life
That's
is to be
interesting, yeah.
the life is to be beautified, but the death, no. You know, we are meant to want to live. We are designed to live. Yes, we all have an expiration date. Absolutely. And, you know, most of us don't have a clue as to what that is. And at most you get a little clue as it gets closer. But, you know, most of us have no idea. And people are taken suddenly. And, you know, I'm thinking of we have people in our congregation who lost relatives to COVID. You know, the person is fine 1 minute and 3 days later they're gone. In my congregation in Tucson, one of the members there, a young widow, she became a young widow, with a challenging child as well. You're not the only one on the planet. And yeah,
Aaron's kind of smiling over here in the corner.
yeah.
Were you really challenging?
Oh yeah.
There's no words to truly describe it.
Let's say he will be a good psychologist in his day because
There you
he
go.
will be able to pull on experience. He is doing one of the things that I teach, which is to take what you experience and turn it into something powerful and good and help others with it. So, yeah.
Can't ask for anything more.
No, you really can't. And I think that as Aaron was being helped through his earlier days, he started to realize how important it was for people to be able to step in and point out some key things. Am I saying it delicately enough?
Even though I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, I know you didn't want to hear it. I've still got the pictures of some of those, too.
I know.
But you get it. You get it now.
More
Right.
so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's entirely sunk in, but it will.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, children do things and they're children. And that's, I think, part of why his fascination with neural is to help children fire the synapses properly. Now he understands that a little better. And he'll understand it even better when he finishes his program of training. We all have different challenges in life. We all have a different deck to play with. And the key is how we play those cards. And so, you know, yeah, the service says there are no timely deaths. There are only unwanted deaths. There are no blessed deaths, though some are more peace-giving than others. And it's that recognition that, yes, Stuart is no longer suffering from the injuries to his ankles and to his knees that he was suffering. He's, you know, those pains are gone. The pains in his chest. You know, he had mentioned on the Hour Ask a Lawyer that my father was scheduled for an angiogram, and Stuart had one on Thursday, and the doctor said everything was fine. And Stuart's comment was that he wished he knew what was causing the pain in his chest, because then there was something you could do. And that's, you know, one of the things that people may not realize, that going to the doctor can afford you a path out. And of course he didn't get that Thursday because the doctor said, no, there's no need for a stent or anything like that. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so sometimes our body just says, you know, it's that date. And while he had not been comfortable, I'd say, the last week, and obviously enough to go to the doctor on Thursday, I'm not aware that there was any one thing going on. It just, yeah. But again, I wasn't there. I only know what I heard from Lisa. So. But it was fairly quick, because it was only the afternoon where he had said to her, let's go to the hospital. And within hours he was gone. So. And I know that the hospital did everything they could. And Lisa did everything she could. She actually, she didn't end up taking him to the hospital. She ended up having to call 911 and get an ambulance. So, but yeah, it's sometimes we linger and don't want it to be true. And I don't think it would have been different had he been at the hospital sooner. I really don't. But that's probably the rabbi in me saying that it was his time.
Well, it's like you've said for years. We all do have expiration dates. Period. End of story.
And just as kids don't come with instruction books tied to their toes when they're born, the expiration date is written in invisible ink, rather, not indelible, but both, I think. Invisible and indelible ink. It might be on our forehead, but nobody can see it.
Life in eternity.
Yeah.
How is that described?
Jewishly, that the soul is eternal,
Mm-hmm.
and that returns to God. The soul is a part of God and returns to God at death. And Jewishly, we talk about the presence, the soul lingering for a few days, and giving those last gifts that it's going to give, or the feelings, the whatevers that it's going to give, the little signals. And I mean, for me, for example, one of mine, and you'll figure out between you and Stuart what yours is, but for me, it's been, my parents seem to show up as birds. Whenever there's a critical decision to be made, the birds are doing weird things. And that's all I can say. They're like walking on cars, or it's just, it's not something they don't do, but they don't tend to do in great numbers, and then all of a sudden a bunch of them are doing it. Or I'll open the door and there's 3 herds of them on my front yard. When a few years ago, when the dentist and his 2 daughters were killed in the plane crash, as we were leaving the temple to go up to the cemetery for the interment, the birds were just swarming overhead. So much so that the funeral director actually commented on it. And my comment,
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
My comment was, I'm not surprised. It's my dad and mom and their friends. It's, do I really think that they're in the birds? No, I don't. But it's just these weird things that you notice, and so that's always been my wake up to pay a little more attention. You're going to look at something in the service.
To everything there's a season.
Ecclesiastes.
Turn.
Turn. Yeah. And whenever I read it, I hear that song in my head.
Oh, me too. The moment we all started to read this, I'm thinking, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turn. I'm not going to sing it because I'll butcher it. All right. To everything there is a season, a purpose under heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think that's read at both Jewish and Christian funerals.
Yes. Yeah.
Simply because that text is so powerful. And so we read it at ours. It's just part of it. And as you can see in that service, those who've had me officiate at a funeral service, I create a handout. It's about 8 pages long in large print, so that people can actually follow along and then keep that as a memento, a token.
And there are a lot of pictures of
There are a lot
Stuart,
of,
Lisa.
Yeah, there are more pictures of
This
Stuart.
little guy here.
Yeah, and when he was a little guy.
Yeah, when he was a little guy, yeah.
And there's a picture from his bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
We have lots of memories from his bar mitzvah celebration.
Was the bar mitzvah pre your height or after your height?
At the bar mitzvah, you were just there. You were just a
it was
scoosh taller.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It was close.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
You guys were real
Yeah.
close at that point.
Yeah, well, when he started, he was about here. That's the standard joke, right? When they start their bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah training, they're shorter than me, and by the time they get taller, then they can have the celebration. Once or twice, particularly with older students, they might be taller than me, because that's obviously where kids have a growth spurt. And I'm 5'2", nothing. Uh, and that was at my tallest. I'm not sure I'm there anymore, but
So the bar mitzvah is in your religion?
the bar or bat mitzvah is a celebration at 12 or 13, somewhere in that range, usually close to 13, where a young person becomes a functioning part of the community. They count, their opinions start to matter, and the celebration is a rite of passage. They're not adults. They like to think they are, but they're not. And
Look at that grin on his
we had to
face.
remind him of that many, many times. Even Jewishly, while people in England might have been getting married at 12 or 13, a la Romeo and Juliet, Talmud says that 21 is the right age for people to get married, where they're mature enough to perhaps handle a child. And but 13, and part of the training is to know enough to be able to lead a congregation if you're called on to do so. And Aaron demonstrated at the Shiva service. We do a service every evening for a while. And he demonstrated that he's retained a good chunk of it. He probably thinks more than I do, but that would be normal. I'm the rabbi and he's Aaron.
What did that mean to you, Aaron, going through that whole experience?
What, the Shiva?
No, the bar mitzvah.
The bar mitzvah.
Being called to Torah.
I thought I was an adult, but I thought it was cool.
You were cool. I'll give you that. You were very cool.
Pretty difficult, though.
What was the most difficult part of it?
Making sure I didn't get my date postponed again.
I think he didn't believe me when we first said it to him.
I never do. I say I do, but do I really? No.
Have I ever lied to you?
Not when it mattered.
So, we'll talk more about that on the way home, I'm sure.
Oh, boy.
So,
And for you, I would imagine after all this time of instruction, they almost become your kids.
they, I was never able to carry a child to term. So I have no natural children. And I guess it's my rationalization, my workaround, and I say that's God's way of making sure that I take care of all the spiritual kids that I have in the world, and I do and have. My very first, the very first person that I worked with as a rabbi, because I worked with people before I became a rabbi. I used to, in fact, in Pennsylvania, I took 10 adult women when it wasn't common for adult women to celebrate a bat mitzvah. And I had some of those people come up to me decades later, which is amazing when I'm only 29, but come up to me much later and say, "Oh, you're Shafir. You helped me get ready for my bat mitzvah." And then I'll remember and recognize the face because I was fairly young at the time, and that was shortly after my dad had died. So it's a turbulent time in my life. But once I started studying to be a rabbi, and I did that after being out in the other world for a long time. The very first one, she's now got 2 kids and living in Indiana, and we're still communicating via Facebook and sometimes by phone. Others of my students are working in sports as an announcer, actually, in Arizona. And so, so they keep in touch with me. And sometimes I keep in touch even with the parents. They have become my family, and certainly with Stuart and with Aaron and with Lisa, it's been a much more closer relationship than it has with some. And I don't take it lightly. We talk a lot about life in the process of getting ready. It's not just read this Hebrew and do it right. There's a whole lot of side discussion that goes on, trying to help people become who and what they can be.
Coincidentally, part of my Torah portion when I did have my bar mitzvah was about what do you do when your kid dies and you have to go up in front of a bunch of people. You can't just break down. You have to keep going on with life as if nothing just happened.
Wow.
Yeah. So, all right, his portion was dealing with when Aaron loses 2 of his sons in the opening of the sanctuary. Right. It's a big event. It's the opening of the sanctuary. It's a holy time and space. And his 2 kids die suddenly. The breath is knocked out of them, and they're gone. And that happens. It happens in life sometimes. When I worked at Akron General Hospital, I can remember very distinctly during one of my CPE trainings, we had a talk from the head of oncology. And he actually said to us that if he could choose the way that he's to die, he would pick cancer. Because cancer patients, even though they have pain, the pain can be managed. He said, but what it does is it gives you a clue what that expiration date is. And you can do the things, you can say those final words, you can do all those things that you don't get when the death is sudden. And, sudden deaths are harder to, I think harder to deal with than when you can say some of those things you want to say. And, and hopefully the person can respond to you. And, yeah. It's, what can I say? Life is precious, folks. Please treat, Jewishly we're taught to plan as if we're going to live forever and to live like we're going to die in the next little bit. So enjoy the moment, enjoy the sunset, enjoy the rainbow, enjoy the people you love in your life. And, yeah. One of the things that I'm working on is a lessons learned book. It's got a ways because I keep procrastinating on it. But there's a line in there that talks about things I've learned from the cactus. My husband and I rescued a night blooming cereus from a trash heap. And it's now growing up in my yard, and it's got a whole bunch of little pups on it. But it's also got about 30 little flowers. And it bloomed actually that very first season that we rescued. It didn't even have roots yet, and it put out little flowers, right? So bloom where you are, no matter what's happening.
This is from Tucson, right?
No, that was here in Port St. Lucie. It's not a Queen of the Night. And to all my plant lovers, my planty folks here in Tucson, in Port St. Lucie, what we called Queen of the Night here in Port St. Lucie is not what we called Queen of the Night at Tohono Chul. And I'm inclined to think that Tohono Chul is probably right. The other is a night blooming cactus, and there are many. And there's night blooming cereus, which is a whole kind. And these you can see them in a couple of different places in Port St. Lucie, and they were in Tucson as well. It's the big fat, the cactus body's about, maybe 10, 12 inches in diameter. And it just puts out a whole bunch of little blooms. They're not as delicate as the flower off the Queen of the Night, but they're gorgeous and spectacular, and the pollinators love it. And so, that's the lesson from the cactus. Bloom where you're planted. And be grateful for being rescued from the trash heap so you don't get chewed up and made into mulch.
There you go.
But even being made into mulch, you're still going to put your molecules back in. We are part of this system, right? It's so one of the sobering things is that every molecule of water that's out there has always been part of the Earth, ever since we were formed as a planet.
And the one thing you mentioned during the ceremony was basically the final gate.
Yeah. We all come to the final gate, beyond which the unknown. Judaism doesn't say that this is what it's going to be like after you die. We say that the soul goes back to God and it's eternal, but I have no idea what that means. And I'm left with the feeling that it's got to be reasonably good, because my experiences of God, it's not a function of belief. Judaism says life is about the experience of the divine in our lives. And all of those have been wonderful. So, as I pointed out, and I say this to my classes, if what we discuss in class challenges your faith, then your faith is fragile. What we discuss in class should deepen and enhance your faith, not eliminate it. Because if it eliminates it, then you've built it up on a house of cards that can't stand. And so, if God is, and I don't know any religion that doesn't say that God is love. And, I teach religions. I don't know any of them that don't say that. That doesn't mean that people don't hijack and abuse religion. That's done all the time because it's a powerful tool.
And that's nothing new. That goes all the way back to the Talmud days.
Before that.
Yeah.
Right. Pharaohs, I'm sure. I know. Right. If the accounts are anything approaching. That's the other thing, of course, that I say is we don't really know anything. I believe that pharaohs did it. Pretty sure that kings have done it all along. That's why the Bible is so against kings. No offense to King Charles. He's a limited monarch, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. And it's part of why the U.S. is formed the way we did, right? We're a constitutional republic, a la your Constitution class, and England is a constitutional monarchy. Their monarchy is limited by the agreements with, finally the people said this is how it's going to be. And, things have to be a cooperative and move forward. So, yeah.
If I can put in my...
Sure,
I
please.
think one of the, good things about Judaism, now, it probably is in other religions, but Judaism is really, there's not one way to God. You find your own path. Even if you stray away, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You can always have your own connection, no matter how intense or how limited it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things that changed for Stuart in Aaron's training for the bar mitzvah celebration was that he started coming to services and found out he liked it. He was not a service goer, although the first place that I met Aaron really, I think I saw you at Sunday school at the other place, but I also saw you at the Tot Shabbat. That's where I saw you a lot. Yeah, that's where we really got to know each other. And, but, yeah, Stuart didn't like going to service. He'd go at the High Holy Days, and he said that many times on Ask a Lawyer, that he was mostly a High Holy Day, which, of course, here's the segue, folks. If you'd like to join us for the High Holy Days, please go to www.eitzchaym.org and register. We do not sell tickets, but we do accept donations.
Well, and how many Catholics are just Easter and Christmas? I mean, if you think about it.
Creasters. Yeah. There's even a term for it.
Creasters. I've never heard that.
Clergy talk.
That's wonderful.
Right. So, and so he got to, and I've said this other times, he didn't intend to become president of the congregation, but the congregation became an important part of his life. And you only have to look at the pictures to see that. Crazy pictures like me coming out of a bounce house that he helped arrange. So there was so many things that he, little things that he did here and there that we'll continue to unpack. And in the sanctuary, when I stand to lead services, I am looking right at one of Stuart's favorite pictures of, he calls it the rabbi. It's an old style picture of a man with a beard with a holding a Torah, and he liked that artist. He's got a duplicate, not a duplicate, but another painting from that same artist hanging in his house. And but I look at that, and Jewish art was always very important to Stuart. He's got tons of that.
High Holy Day Jew, he really was Jewish.
In some interesting ways, yes. And And he used to say to me that before I came to Port St. Lucie, the idea of a female rabbi was just not in his lexicon. But he obviously changed that as well. He got used to it. And it took him a while. It took him a while to get used to the idea of a rabbi. But as we got to know each other, because he took some adult ed classes with me as well, that was one of the more interesting moments. That was before Aaron started formal bar mitzvah training. At the other place, I was doing some adult ed, and he was one of the students in that. And we kind of went through Jewish history, and he would have been a good rabbi. He would have argued about Talmud until the cows came home, too.
You think? Oh,
The
my.
amount of times I heard that she was wrong the second he got home.
It wouldn't have been Stuart if he hadn't thought that. Yeah. Yeah, and as I've pointed out, just because I'm a rabbi doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. I make a ton of them.
Well, it just the thought of female rabbi. I mean, they are not on every street corner.
No, but just as with
You're growing.
yeah,
obviously.
as with college in general, the number of rabbinical students that are female is now greater than the number that are male.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's reflecting that trend in society that more women are going for higher education than men.
The rabbi at the Hillel at Nova is a woman.
Okay. Good stuff. Catholic Church can learn. Women priests.
Well,
Whoa!
that's one of the big reasons for the split of the American Catholic Church off from
Yeah.
the Roman Catholic.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and I think it's there's a whole bunch of gender stuff, and that's one of Aaron's favorite topics. Is the gender dynamics in life, and of course Stuart did fight for the rights of people to be treated equal.
Yes, he did for years.
Yeah,
Decades.
yeah. So in many different ways.
Well, and you think about what he talked about going to Rutgers.
Yeah, where he intentionally went to the black side.
Yes, and you think about that and how that really cemented his legal background.
Absolutely. And the candor with which he describes that one time that he felt uncomfortable
Yeah.
being the only light face in the group.
Yeah.
A recognition that he still had some of that subliminal, right, subconscious paradigms going on. And I know that he fought those. Many of our discussions were not just about racial. Right. So here's the piece, folks. If we took the human genome and we mapped it into a large room, the amount of genetic material that controls skin color is very, very tiny. There really is one human race. And, and I'm sorry, guys, you're the guys with the missing piece of the chromosome. But we're all still humans. Okay? And, but that doesn't mean that racism and sexism and all those other isms aren't real. They are. There's fatism. Right? There are people who would look at Stuart and see his size and decide that instantly that he was lazy and had no willpower. Trust me, Stuart had willpower. Yeah. How he chose to wield it is a whole other issue, and some of those are easy choices, and some, as Aaron is starting to study, are not so easy choices. Sometimes it's how the synapses were wired genetically, and sometimes how they're wired by our parents. We still don't know what's nature and what's nurture. That's the ongoing discussion.
Ooh, that's pretty heavy. Nature and nurture.
Yeah, well, are your eating habits learned by what your parents do and don't do? How they push you, how they don't push you? Or is it wired into you genetically? If how much of it's modeled? Right. So Stuart used to talk about his eating disorder, his ARFID, and that's something he battled every day that I knew him, that he couldn't bring himself to do a number of things. Now, what would have been different had his parents not caved into that? Right. If they had somehow gotten... So one of the things we know about ARFID is that if we can get the food in your mouth and get you to eat it once or twice, the odds are much greater that you'll eat it. But it's got to be a very... And that was what the treatment that he was going through was about, was what foods can we get in your mouth, right? Is it the texture? Is it the taste? What is it that's disturbing that? And there are a number of people with that disorder.
Yeah, and it's growing.
Yeah, because a lot of... my parents never forced me to eat anything. And definitely one of the things that my husband and I agreed on early in our relationship was that I would try every single food. It was a commitment that I made to him because I was a very finicky eater. And he said to me, that's you deserve better, was how he phrased it. And he was right. And fortunately, he did that. My mother caved in. She gave in to me. She would make special meals for me. Yeah, we've never talked about that. I can see the look coming from you. And I wasn't anywhere near as fussy as you or your dad, but I was fussy. I didn't eat vegetables. I didn't like anything green. And
Normal kid then.
well, that was normal. But I mean, I still liked, I liked my carbs, and Aaron and I actually talked about this on the way here. I am exactly the body shape of my mother and grandmother. Thank you, folks. My dad was not skinny either, not as heavy as Stuart, but my genetic predisposition. But how much of that's also, what they ate and how they ate and how I grew up experiencing that. I mean, my mother always joked that I would probably be born looking Oriental because she loved Chinese food so much. And I adore Chinese food.
Oh,
and we
so
we know that there's a connection between what your mother eats and what the child then likes.
You wouldn't know it with me and my mother.
Well, that's because your dad had a big influence in there. And but you'll unpack that. But so I made that commitment with him. And ironically, one of the things I discovered is that I love vegetables. Now, truth be told, my mother slaughtered every vegetable she ever cooked. And so that had a lot to do with it. And the irony in there is that she complained that her mother slaughtered vegetables and she was doing so much better. And my husband will candidly admit that when she got done with the vegetables, it was sometimes hard to recognize what they were, other than green. But slight exaggeration, but not much. There was no crunch left in any of those vegetables. They were dead. And so how much of that influenced how I grew up? And now my palate is much, much bigger. I'm willing to eat many more things, and I enjoy healthy meals. So it gives you a lot more options. So we don't know how much of that's nature and how much of it's nurture. We do know that kids are the best imitators of their parents on the planet. And kids do not do what you tell them to do. They do what they see you do. Common discussion between me and Stuart.
Ooh.
Right. So what are you modeling in behavior? Something for every parent to consider. Right? Don't tell your kid not to smoke while you're vaping. It's not going to work. If the kid decides not to smoke, it's because of other influences, not you, if you are actively smoking, whether it's vaping or cigarettes or whatever.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea why I never smoked. My mother and father both smoked like chimneys. And I guess it was just the smell. And I was playing a lot of sports. And it just never occurred to me.
Yeah. Well, I didn't smoke, and both my parents did. I actually turned them against smoking. My father, not soon enough. He only quit. He quit the December before he died in June.
Oh, boy.
No, July. He died in July. My mother had quit smoking by then and hadn't picked it back up. And she lived many more years after he passed. But one of the things that my father had promised me was that he would quit smoking when my mother quit, because it was very hard for a smoker to quit when somebody else in the house continues to smoke. And I can remember to this day, my father had moved ahead of us to Pennsylvania, and so I was coming east with my mom, and then I was going to be going to college in Pennsylvania, but I had helped them with the move, and my father greeted us at the door by saying, "I haven't had a cigarette in 6 weeks," which is exactly how long we'd been separated. And on the doorstep, before we even went into the house, I turned around and put my hand out to my mother for her pack, which I knew was in her purse. The 2 or 3 packs that were probably in there. And that's before they cost what they cost today. They were a whole lot cheaper back then. But, I'm 903, so that's what I tell my students.
You're half my age, so that's okay.
Gotcha. Double hockey sticks and many, many more. So, we don't know what parts you learn and what becomes ingrained through imitation. And that's a hard one for parents. It's a hard one for teachers, to remember. Right. If you model a less than ethical behavior in the classroom, the odds are you're teaching your students to do that exact thing. Students, children, everybody learns by imitation. Even dogs. Dogs will imitate other dogs or cats.
My cats imitate me.
Yeah.
I taught my cats how to boot my mother.
Oops. Not exactly.
I'm so proud of that.
You're so proud of that. This is part of the challenge of grazing this one as a child. It's the things that he's proud of. Someday, you'll have your own. And so it's we're drawing up close to the end of this episode. Folks, please feel free with any questions that you might have. 772-340-1590. We are dedicating this episode to the memory of Stuart M. Address, Esquire. Something that he worked very, very hard to do. He acknowledged that he had just a touch of ADHD, and it caused him to go from place to place to place. And he doesn't sit still for very long, which made his pains and aches and broken bones much harder for him.
Unless he's watching the news.
Watching the news, watching an inauguration, watching a coronation, any of those things would certainly keep his attention. But, yeah. And that probably was part of why he didn't like services, because they had him sitting longer than he probably liked. But he got used to it, and then he realized he could move around.
And it was funny. I remember Stuart talking about how in college he was, I guess, sort of thinking a little bit about possible broadcasting career.
Yeah.
And needless to say, it didn't go that way. It went the legal route. But, yeah.
Yeah, I think he would have liked that, or a ball player. He'd have loved to have been a professional ball player. Baseball.
Aaron, did your dad ever do athletics at all when he was a kid?
When he was a kid, yeah. In fact, in his office, he has his high school letter when he made varsity.
Oh, cool. Which sport?
Baseball.
In baseball? Oh, naturally. Yeah.
I know when I was younger, I had a year where my baseball coaches were all professionals that had all made it different levels, whether major leagues, minor leagues, college. And he always said that the one year he tried football, he had a former pro, and he gave up because it was too much work.
Wow. Baseball player. Okay.
Yeah, baseball.
That makes sense.
I don't know, but I'm pondering if living in Port St. Lucie doesn't have something to do with being close to the Met Stadium.
I think it does.
Yeah. I know he was very happy when the Temple moved across the street from Met Stadium. That was like, well, then he could kind of split,
Sneak out the back door and go over to the game.
There was, I don't know if people remember it a few years back, but one of the fireworks, a Friday night fireworks at the Met Stadium caught fire close to IRSC's campus.
Oh, it did.
And we watched that. We watched the fireworks, and we watched the one come down, and I remember thinking, and maybe even saying, wow, that one was pretty lit when it came back toward the ground. And sure enough, a few seconds later, because we were watching it from the front of the temple.
I remember Rachel and I saw
Yeah, you guys were out in the parking lot.
all the orange
Yeah.
and then brought everyone out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Oh, it was such a dry summer.
Yeah.
And yeah, it went up quick.
But that was one of the attractions of having the synagogue where it is, that you can stand out in front of the synagogue and see the fireworks.
Of course, now you're on the other side of the stadium, so you're right next to South County Stadium.
Yeah, well, we can still see the fireworks
Oh, yeah, you can.
when they go up
You bet. Yeah.
very easily, and we can hear the South loudspeaker, sometimes even over services. That usually raises a few eyebrows.
Yeah, I've been there a few times thinking, she's right over
Yep,
the
she's right over
stands
there
there.
and
So,
probably
yeah.
hearing exactly what's being said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was one night you were having services. It probably would have been the High Holy Days because Vero Beach was there. They have this monstrous band that's, maybe 200 kids. And so I was thinking, and she's trying to do a religious service right behind the buses. It's like, oh, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, well, people will very often park. It's the standing joke. Oh, we've got a big attendance tonight because there's so many cars from the stadium parked in the parking lot, and our people are parking 2 or 3 buildings in.
Better than football season.
That's true. So soccer and football and baseball, everything, and it's just part of being where we're at. And for folks who want to join us, that Friday night tonight is our Shabbat dinner, and chicken, salmon, and brisket. And our services start at 7:30, and we're at 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102. That's the front building of the West Park office complex, right across from Met Stadium. Well, a little bit kitty corner between it and the college. And it's the front building, the one right by the stairs or elevator.
Now, when do you start the plant sales up again?
We're going to be doing that in October after the holidays.
Okay.
Right now, for some reason, one of us is a little busy.
Oh, I can't imagine
Yeah.
why.
Thank you, Stuart. So Rosh Hashanah is the evening of the 25th and the day of the 26th. That is it's usually called Jewish New Year. It's the head of the year. And you can register if you'd like to attend those services on www.eitzchaym.org. Or you can contact me, and the information's there. We don't sell tickets, but we do accept donations. And Yom Kippur is the evening of the 5th of October and the day of the 6th. And thanks to Stuart and Aaron, Port St. Lucie schools have off on Yom Kippur.
There you go.
They only get 1 day for the high holidays. It should be at least 2, but we didn't succeed in pushing them that far. But we got 1 day off.
They finally got it.
Well, if you look back in TC Palm, you'll see the story. There was a big, we set up a news conference to talk about it, and because Stuart had tried calling them, I had tried calling them, and we were not getting much response from the school board. And what we had gotten was not an uncommon response. Well, we've got Jews working for us, and they haven't complained.
Well, why are they going to complain? They're going to get fired.
Yeah. So, understandably. And so, we said, parents are not happy because they have to work around their kids in school. The schools with their incentives on attendance, and I understand that. I mean, it's hard to learn if you're not in class. We know that students learn better when they're in class, and so schools push perfect attendance. But that puts a tremendous pressure on Jewish parents because it does interfere with the holidays. So, yeah, it's just one of those things.
So all I can say about Stuart Address is that he picked a heck of a way to get out of going to the high holy days.
He did. He did.
Gosh.
Doesn't have to deal with some of the things I'm sure he wasn't looking forward to, like running down and picking up family and some of the other things that go alongside.
Not looking forward to that is an understatement.
Okay. Dreading the drive to go pick up family who lives south of here. And, yeah. We will definitely miss him. He will be a large hole in our celebration. There's no question. And there's a ritual on Erev Yom Kippur on Kol Nidre where the past presidents of the congregation, and right now Maxine Kadish is our president, and we have them come up and hold a Torah. So we're definitely going to miss.
I'll do it for
Yeah,
him.
that's what I was going to ask if you would.
Oh, wow. That
Yeah.
would be nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, this has been a special episode dedicated to the memory of Stuart M. Address, Esquire. Zichron Livracha. May his memory be a blessing. Hi, this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb, Congregation Eitz Chaim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. Please join us for the holidays.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster of the world.